write their own script. Thirdly, I don't take things literally I don't overdo it. For instance, Jesus says, I am the door in John 10:7 and 10:9. I don't say, well, that says he's a door. No, that's going, to a ridiculous extreme. And another example, like in Genesis 2:19, says God brought all the animals before Adam so he could name them. Well, I don't press that and say, well, he said all the animals. That means every animal on the earth. That's overdoing it. So I try to be reasonable when I'm using the literal approach. And lastly, and this is really, I think, the kicker, if I'm being too literal, give me some examples. Don't just give me a grandiose generalization. I want some examples of where I'm being too literal. Now, as I say, I have a great deal of... There's one point I don't want to pass up here is in regards to atheism. Like every time I go on the radio, the first thing a caller will say, first one that calls up, say, are you an atheist? I always want to know if I'm an atheist. My answer to that is, first, I don't even discuss that much I don't discuss that in my topics, in my publication or in my books. Because, well, for several reasons. One of them is too nebulous. You can't really pin it down one way or the other. But even more importantly, I would expand the question. What he really should ask me is, do you believe in the supernatural? And my answer is, I don't believe in anything supernatural. I don't believe in spooks, devils, ghosts, angels, boogie bears, witches, ghosts, goblins, you name it. And that includes all gods and goddesses. And they'll say, why not? I say, well, provide the evidence there is such a thing. I think some atheists, and I've heard them speak, are making a mistake when they try to prove none of these things I just mentioned don't exist. When somebody says to me they believe in a God and they say, prove there isn't one, I don't say that. Well, my answer to them is, no, you prove there is. The burden of proof lies on he who alleges. And that's the Achilles heel. I've said this several times in my publication. That's the Achilles heel to all supernatural thinking. Don't put the burden on your shoulders, throw it on theirs. It's not up to you to disprove. It's not up to you to disprove. It's up to them to prove. And until they prove, it's false. Because if you operate on any other principle, if we operate on the principle that if somebody says, I'm the reincarnation of George Washington, prove I'm not, that means every harebrained idea you could possibly come up with is true until somebody disproves it. And that's not logical. That isn't even rational. Because the sky's the limit. So the Achilles heel is they have to prove it exists, and because they can't, therefore it's false. And that's the point that I would make to the atheists. Don't try to prove God doesn't exist. Make them prove he does. Because they can't do it. I mentioned earlier that I attacked the Bible, and I think that that is the way to do it, by attacking what is using what's in the Bible as opposed to what's outside the Bible. You know, we're in a real battle in this country right now. Fundamentalists are a real powerhouse. And Pat Buchanan says we're involved in a cultural war. It's more than a cultural war. It's involved in a war in barely every aspect you want to mention. And one of the biggest opponents is those that are propagating the Bible. A lot of people, from my point of view or my perspective, say, I don't like the Bible, I don't want to read it. I agree with them. The Bible is boring, it's repetitious, it's childish, it's superstitious, it's monotonous, but you have to read it because so many people take it seriously. If you're going to critique it effectively. You can't stand a distance and throw rocks, is what a lot of people tried to do. The Bible's made to order for the rock throwers because it's so contradictory. If you throw a verse or throw something at it that says, well, you shouldn't kill, I can pull out a Bible verse that says the opposite. If you say you should kill, I can pull out a Bible verse that says the opposite. So no matter what way you want to go at the Bible, they got a verse in there that's going to contradict what you're saying. All these internal contradictions work to its benefit. As Thomas Paine once says, you can prove anything you want from the Bible. It takes a stance on any topic any way you want to look at it. So at any rate, it's important to fight the fundamentalists. I don't want to get involved too much in that because I think most of us are aware of the fact that when putting in God we trust on the coins, requiring people to say under God in a Pledge of Allegiance, having school prayer, having the Ten Commandments on stones in a government building of some sort, all these activities are patently unconstitutional, and no question about it. What really decides the issue is just simply what group has the most political clout. It isn't who's correct or who's following the Constitution. These Christians who want to get this prayer nonsense into schools irritate me no end. Because what they're doing is they want to take my tax money, build a building, to send children to this building to learn to pray and to do something that I totally oppose. I didn't pay my money, my tax money, to create a structure to propagate an ideology that I totally detest. However, I'll say this. They want to teach religion in the schools. Let's do it this way. You bring in your fundamentalist minister. Of course, this is unconstitutional. You bring in your fundamentalist minister and you let him talk in the schools for an hour. And when he's done, you bring in somebody like me, let me get an hour. I have no problem with that at all. As I say, both of us would be violating the Constitution if we did it, but I have no problem with that. You think they'd go along with that? Not in a million years. Why, the parents would be calling up the school board, raising Cain beyond belief, and the superintendent would have to unplug his phone. The opposition would be so great. Why? Because I'd have the advantage. They're hearing the other side all the time. Students are hearing all this religious nonsense. They hear it on television. All you have to do is scan the screens. They don't hear mine or what I'm saying at all. So I definitely had to be at an advantage on that type of arrangement. I don't have any problem discussing the Bible. Shoot, I have people come to my door. Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. They show up, I invite them in. Then I bolt the door behind them. Because to me, this is just a poor lost soul who's been brought to my house for salvation. Because what he's peddling is full of problems, and he certainly isn't going to find out what's wrong with it by listening to people in his church or on television or radio. It's a totally one-sided presentation. I've been censored in what I'm doing. I've been on the radio. A talk show hosts invite me back. They don't call me up. I call them up later to find out what the problem is. Usually it's either the callers have called up the station saying, "What'd you have him on for?" Or the sponsor doesn't like the idea of me being on, or the station management and ownership doesn't like it. Usually it's a cross between the three. I've even had one person all but admit it as much, one talk show host. I know it's not because there wasn't an audience, because when I was on the radio, the switchboard looked like a Christmas tree. Christians couldn't get on there fast enough.